we're building. You know what I'm saying? We're building, right? And we'll probably still do a Rampal. Maybe I don't know. It depends how deep we go into it. But this is a safer. This is a Rab Ashlag safer. We're just gonna go into it. So we're just in it. We're just in this Rab Ashlag world right now. So interesting. It's like okay. So the Talmud. So it's okay. So basically, this safer. Let's just go back a little bit. So basically, Sefer it details the explanations of the Kabbalistic teachings of the Ari,
Mm.
right? So that's basically like what I just want to make sure I give the exact definition and not, because I was going to just say this is kind of like his introduction to the Ari, if that makes sense, right? It's a very important Sefer in just terms of building and we're just exploring right now. Okay, so it says Farish Melim, right?
Can't see your screen, bro.
Oh, what's that again?
I can't see your screen.
Oh, sorry about that. Thank you.
Or I guess I should say we can't see your screen. I forgot we're live.
Oh, we're good.
Yeah.
Okay, so it says okay. So this is his introduction to I get in many ways the teachings of the Ari, right? And I started to learn a little bit of it, and I was like, wow, this is like so essential, for people who, especially like people like yourself, who have been exposed to Kabbalah and have been learning, the Zohar, for years. How many years have you been learning Zohar?
Mm, I think three now.
3 now. So yeah, so you've been into that whole space, and so the thing is, we want to be able to have a framework of the tradition of it, right? And that's why it's so important to learn like Rob Ashlag's like his introductions and certain points of development because there's so much Kabbalah like being said all over the world and Kabbalah teachers and people in the Hebrew Israelite community teaching Kabbalah and all these different types of things. So what we want to do is have conversations where we could say like, hey, this is what it is, and this is the structure, and this is the tradition of this other stuff, right? Because we're incumbent of that, so like people don't get the wrong impression and wrong things and start messing up worlds, right? All right. So it says mitzati li sarik gadol. Okay. So it sounds like this the claims against the wisdom of Kabbalah, right? So so he's starting off like this, and this is Rob Afshar. That's why I just fell in love with this safer instantly when I read this first line. He says, first of all, he says, I have found that there is a great need for me to smash the existing iron barrier that is separating us from the wisdom of Kabbalah from the time of the destruction of the temple and onwards until this generation of ours. These barriers have made things very difficult for us indeed, and has led to the fear that the wisdom might be forgotten from Israel, God forbid. Now, whenever I start speaking to anyone on the topic of the study of Kabbalah, the person's first question is, why do I have to know how many angels there are in the heavens and their names? Can I observe the entire Torah with all of its details and all of its details in things without knowing these points? Shanit Yitz'el Holed Kaver Kava'u Chachmim. And so Chachamim. And so he says, And so he says, second, he will ask, the sages have already determined that one must initially obtain a full knowledge of the Talmud and the books of the books of the ruling of halakha, who then can deceive himself into believing that he has already finished the entire revealed Torah and that he lacks only esoteric Torah. So he's saying, like, what do you mean? Like, the sages said you gotta know all these things, you gotta know this, because this is the idea, right? You gotta be 40, you gotta have kids, you have to know all of this, these different things. So he's addressing this. Sheloshi hu mifachada shelo yichamit. So he says like this. The third is afraid that he might ruin himself by becoming involved with this topic. God forbid, because it has happened that people have been led astray from the path of the Torah due to their occupation with Kabbalah. If so, why do I need this trouble? And who is so foolish as to place himself in danger for nothing? Rivi'id afilu ha cho ve'vim et ha cho Talmud. Sorry, no, it's not that Tasha. So it's Halimud, and so he says the fourth, and even those who cherish this study permit it only to certain history, only to certain history individuals who serve God and do not serve and do not and not anyone who wishes to assume the reputation of a God-fearing person may come and assume it. Hold on, let me understand this. Even those who cherish this study permitted only to a certain holy individual. Okay, so the people who think, yeah, Kabbalah is a thing, but it's only for the super holy. Here that I've heard people say, the super holy who serve God and not anyone and wishes to assume a reputation of God-fearers may come and assume. So those are the people, the pious. Hamashit vehu ha'ikar. So he says, fifth, the most important, we have a principle that which applies to any case of uncertainty, that one should go out and observe what the people are doing, says Reuven. I can see with my own eyes that all the Torah scholars of my generation are of one mind. In this regard, they are in this regard, and they withdraw from the study of esoteric wisdom. All right, so let me see this. We have okay. I can see with my own eyes that all the Torah scholars of my generation are of one mind in this regards, and they withdraw from the study of Kabbalah. They also advise those who ask about them that if it is better with any doubt whatsoever to study a page of Talmud than to engage in this area of study. And I actually heard that, like, for a while, like I came into Torah in this whole journey because of Kabbalah, because of the teachings of Rav Ashlag and the Ari and this very Sephara we're reading. I didn't understand them at the time. I would never knew how to read them or anything, but the wisdom of it and the light of it just invoked my soul in a way I can't explain, and it led me all the way to here that now I'm teaching his words, Book of Shem. But the point is just saying that, but after that experience of the Kabbalah, I went into the mainstream Jewish world. And as you know, eventually come to Israel and Yeshiva, and it was just like I was like convinced that there was no point to study Kabbalah. Like it was like, what is the point of studying it? It's this thing, and so all these ideas. Learn the Gemara. All you need to go. And the Gemara is so fascinating, and so deep, and so rich that it's just like, okay, I get it. And then everyone's against it, and they make fun of people. So, anyways, it wasn't until I connected with Rabbi Pinchas that he brought me back. Al-Kinaim Nasim Levenu. So he says, so this is a new idea, right? Kind of. So I don't know where this two is coming from. Oh, maybe this is chapter 2 now? Okay, I guess this is chapter 2. I'm assuming. I don't know. I'm not clear how it's off. He says, True Life. This is the title. The life of the Torah, the mitzvot, however, if we focus on answering only one very famous question, am I sure that all of these questions and misgivings will vanish without a trace? It is irritating. It is the irritating question that is asked of all mortals, namely, what is the point of life? You know the way he just wrote this? Like, listen to how he wrote this. Okay, so he wrote the true life, the life of Torah. The true life is the life of Torah and mitzvot. However, if we focus only on answering one very famous question, I'm sure that all of these questions and misgivings will vanish without a trace. Right? It is the irritating question that is asked by all mortals. Namely, what is the purpose of life? So random how he wrote that, right? So, anyways, he says if so. In essence, he's saying if you the question, what is the point of life? All the other questions go by the wayside. Kalmar misafer shenut chayenu the halalu. So he says, in other words, these few words of our lives, which cost us so dearly through all of the anguish and the pain we suffer through them, in complete or to complete them, to in order to complete them, to in order to complete them to the end. Who benefits from them? To be more precise, to whom am I providing benefit? So he said, in other words, these few years of our lives, our short lives, which cost us so dearly through all the anguish and pain that we experience in life, and in order to complete, in order to complete them to the end, who benefits from them? To be more precise, to whom am I providing benefit? So I guess he's answering the questions. Vehin emet. So he says, it is true. It is true that scholars over the generation, and needless to say, in our generation, have wearied themselves with reflections such that no one even wishes to contemplate this issue. Yet, question itself remains in all of the forces and bitterness, for it is something that meets us unbinding, piercing our minds, and humiliates us down to the ground. Before we manage to scramble and find the well-known strategy, which is to drift mindlessly along the curtains of life as we did the day before. So it's what do you want me to say? You know what I'm saying? Like he's 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 going to this idea. What is the meaning of life? Right? That's the question everyone asks themselves, right? And these types of questions are being like shunned out inside of. So he's making a critique right now on the world of Torah scholars and where the generation is at, and as it relates to esoteric wisdom. And now he's connecting it to the idea of the question is, what are we here for? And the things that we're doing, who's actually benefiting from it, right? So these systems, but people don't want to ask these questions because just the traditional world of just learning the Gemara means not going to give you that answer. That's what I get. He's saying. Alkin lifa tarun lifa tarun chayed no chid sefer mizek. So he says, these the verses formulate in the answer to this unsolved riddle. So he's going to bring a verse, I guess, is going to give us an understanding of this question. Taste and see that the Lord is good. It says in Psalms. those who observe the Torah and mitzvot in accordance with their law will taste the taste of life, and they will see and can attest that the Lord is good, as the sages have stated. He created the world in order to bestow good upon the creatures. For it is the way of good to bestow, for it is the way of good to bestow good. Ve'al vedai, so he says, but it is certainly the case that one who has not yet tasted has not tasted the taste of life found in fulfilling of the Torah and the mitzvot is unable to understand and sense that the Lord is good the way the sages stated. That that God that God's entire purpose in creating him was only to bestow good upon him. He says, "Ein li asa acheret velo litle." So he says, and therefore a person has not, and therefore a person has no other recourse other than to and observe the Torah and the mitzvot according with the law. Any thoughts so far on anything? Because I'm just going, figuring it out.
No, I'm following. Um, he's setting the scene. Setting the table in a sense. So it's almost like he's like forming our minds to be able to go to this place of consciousness that he wants to reveal to us. So I'm
Mm.
following along. Like it kind of reminds me of something that Chief Rabbi Pinchas Eliyahu Shaddai said, where like you know the Torah Aleph, you know what I mean, like where generations have went down in a sense instead of connecting to the esoteric wisdoms, the Kabbalah, that we are, that who we truly are is the Kabbalah. You know what I mean? So it's like the generations have started to dilute themselves in a sense. Don't want to go to these high levels of esoteric wisdom. Instead, we should go to those levels. That's where our soul truly connects to, and everything else permeates down. So
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. So it says in so he says this is the meaning of the verse in Parsha Nitzavim in Deuteronomy. See, I have set before you this day of life and good and death and evil. That is, before the giving of the Torah, only death and evil were before us. The meaning is, as the sages stated, that the wicked are called dead, even if even in their lifetime, right? Their death, their deaths are better than their lives because the suffering and pain that they endure in order to maintain their lives are far more intense than the meager pleasures that they feel during those lives. נעים נעם העתיד, זכינו לתורה, מצוות אשר בקי במה ואנחנו זבקים וחיים. So he says, and now forever we have merited to receive the Torah and the mitzvot, and through the fulfilling them, we merit the true joy, the joyfulness of life, which provides joy to those who live, as it's written, taste and see that the Lord is good. The verse therefore states, "See, I have set before you this day, life and good, which did not exist for you at all, did not exist for you at all before the giving of the Torah." וזהו שמי סיים והכתוב. So he says like this. He says also the meaning. This is also the meaning of the conclusion of the passage in the scripture, Deuteronomy. Choose life that you may live, and you and your descendants. The wording appears repetitively and circular. Choose life in order that you may live. Rather the reference is to a life through the fulfillment of the Torah and mitzvot, a life in which one truly lives, which is not so far a life without Torah and mitzvot. Such an such an existence is harsher than death. I think that speaks for itself. It's going in right now. So he says Rasha'im bechayehem nikaraim metim. And so he says this is the meaning of the statement that the wicked are called dead in their lifetime, as explained. This is also the meaning of the conclusion of the same verse, which that you may live, you and your descendants. In other words, not only does a life without Torah provide no benefit to one who lives, but it also cannot provide benefit to others, meaning that such a person has no satisfaction even from the children he fathers, since the living, since the lives of these children are harder than that are of these children are also harsher than death. Thus, what the gift is he beneaths with them. Since the lives of these children are also harder than death, so everyone's suffering. Amnam hachi beitorah mitzvot. So he says, and by contrast, one who lives through the Torah and the mitzvot, not only merits. This is Rav Ashlag's words. This is Rav Ashlag. And Blessed Mary, we have the merit to connect to the holy neshama of Rav Ashlag. May his spirit be surrounding planet Earth for all the righteous. So he says, by contrast, those who live through the Torah and the mitzvot, not only merits to enjoy his own life, but he also rejoices in the fathering children and bequeathing this good life to them. He passes it on the holiness. This is the meaning of the verse that you may live. You and your descendants, for he receives additional pleasures through the lives of his children, since he has the cause of their lives of enjoyment. So he even gets pleasure. Like sometimes you see like religious families, you see the grandparents come there, and they're just like loving the kids and that, and you could take that for granted. You know what I'm saying? You could take that for granted and say, "Oh, okay, they love their kids." No, but we're learning here that no, that's an access pass, right? They didn't have to earn that. Uve amor tevi'in devere. So he says like this. Devere. That's okay. So it says from with above. So with the above in mind, you can understand the statement of the sages on the aforementioned verse, choose life. See Rashi there, which is as follows. See how he's using the sources too? Same thing. I'm instructing you to choose the portion of life like a man who has his son. Choose for yourself a fine portion of my estate. And the son portions and the man portions his son on the best portion and tells him, select this one for yourself. Amar. So he says like this. He says, regarding this, it is stated, the Lord portion of my inheritance and my cup, you maintain my lot. That is, you place my hand on your best lot, saying, take this one for yourself. Shiliku orot ha devrim tamuhin ki haketuv amar. So it says, now this explanation seems at far this explanation seems at a far glance to be puzzling, since the verse stated choose life, which that is the person who is choosing of his own accord, and yet the sage says that the portion that he positions him near to the best portion. And if so, there is no choice here. Foremost, they also say that God's places the person's hand on the best portion. And this is very surprising, for in that case, where is the where is the person's choice? Okay. Ah. So he's saying like this. So he's saying when you first look at the statement choose life, you could look at it and say, well, yeah, I'm choosing life. I want to live, right? But he's saying something different. He says, no, it's not about choosing life. I want to live. He's saying choosing life, choosing the portions that God has given for you, like the goodness of the world that God has given for you specifically, not just the fact that you're alive, but the bracha of your specific life. You gotta it's here for you. In light of the above mentioned, in light of the above explanation, you can understand their statements properly. It is true and absolutely correct that God Himself places a person's hand on the best portion. That is, He does so by giving a person a life of satisfaction and delight within his corporeal life, full of suffering and pain. This life is devoid of any content, so painful that a man necessarily detaches himself and flees from the pain. But when he is shown even a glimpse of some of the place of tranquility to where he can flee from this life that is harsher than death, there is no greater placement of a person's hand by God than this. So he's saying, like, this world is going to be mostly suffering, unfortunately. And there's going to be moments of happiness. And those moments that open up, we have to run to them and stay in them. That's why the Yom Tovim and these things are so important, because these are gateways into happiness. Shabbat, a gateway into happiness. Why? Because during the week we're suffering. I got to do this, I got to do that, whatever. We don't realize it as suffering per se, because we see people who are suffering even more than us. Or at least if I was suffering in that way, it would be worse for me, right? So so the dynamic is to say that he's saying that he says, like, to the point, he says this life is devoid of any content, so painful that a man necessarily detaches himself. He needs to detach himself and flee from the pain. But when he is shown even a glimpse of some place of tranquility to where he can flee from this life that is harsher than death, there is no greater placement of a person of a person's hand by God than this. So it says, "Vedaver have chira shel ha'adam." So he says, as for the aspect of a person's choice, that choice is only for the purpose of strengthening himself. There is certainly a great labor and much toil here until he purifies his body and fulfills the Torah and the mitzvot in accordance with their law, not for his own benefit, but to give the Creator satisfaction. This is only called for the sake of lishma, for the sake of, right? Just for the sake of heaven. It is only in this manner that a person can merit the life of happiness and comforts that the accomplishments that the accompli- that that accompany and the comfort that accompanies the the observation of the Torah, right? So so he's saying like this. It's like, what is this idea of lishma? Shema is not an easy place to be at to really do things. And I've had some moments in my life where I knew I was doing the lishma. Like I was doing acts of kindness and wasn't being appreciated and experiencing negativity, but still just being kind, being giving, you know. And you're doing it because it's a mitzvah. God said this is what you should do in this situation, right? You give whatever you do, right? But you're suffering, but you're doing it for the sake of heaven. Now, there's other mitzvahs you do. You're like, God, I love it. This feels great. This, wow. God forbid a person says, wow, look, people are seeing how holy I am. Wow, this whole thing. But when you understand that the source of light only comes from the heavens, only comes from Hashem, everything that you want is the light force of the Creator. Every ambition that you have, every desire that you have is to connect to the light force of the Creator, right? And this light force of the Creator, right? This light force of the Creator is this light force of the Creator is what the illusionary world wants to convince us is not the case, right? They want to tell us that we're eating the apple for the taste of the apple and the filling of our belly. No, we're eating the apple because our neshama wants a specific type of light or to elevate a specific type of soul, and that specific soul that needs to be elevated connects, and therefore my hunger is aroused. It's only because my neshama wants to elevate those sparks of kedusha. But the way that my soul interacts with my body is that the body develops these influences, right? So the idea of doing something lishma is saying, hey, I'm not going to get so much reward around me, right? People aren't going to praise me for what I'm doing. Most people are going to be upset about it. So the only way I could progress in this is if I do it for heaven. So it says Uve Tarem Shemigia Lezekut Haze. And so he says, and before he obtains this state of purity, choice is certainly relevant in that it helps strengthen him along the good path. Those those all kinds of methods and strategies, he will thus be able to do all that he can with his own strength until he has completed the labor of purification, and so that he will never fall, God forbid, under the weight of the burden in the middle of his journey. So that's it. So when we obtain this thing where we're like, you know what, I'm doing a mitzvah lishma for the sake of heaven, to connect to the light force of the Creator, to be one with the Creator, nothing else. I don't need that. I'm not doing this because I need money for this, or I need health for that. I need all these things, and it's good to pray for those things, right? But there's sometimes we have to just do things just for the sake of doing it itself, right? All right. And so he's saying, he says, this process of getting to that point of strengthening ourselves, we should aspire for this, right? We should contemplate and say, am I doing this lishma? Am I doing this for the sake of heaven? Am I doing this for the sake of ego? Am I doing it for the sake of personal gain? Right? And so that's our challenge, right? And so he says that pursuing this level of purity will strengthen us on our journey. And it says, thus he will be able to do all that he can with his own strength until he completes the labor of purification. And so that he will not fail, God forbid, to not fall under the burden of the middle of the journey. So this is a big idea, right? This is a big idea, right? Because under the biggest challenge that the ego has in life is that every single person is guaranteed to accomplish their dreams. Every single person, not a select few. Just because we see people on television and people, professional athletes and actors and entertainers and famous politicians and business leaders, that doesn't mean that was their dream. Those are, a lot of times those are things that just happen. A guy grew up, he's 6'10". What do you want? What do you want? He's 6'10". He wasn't 5'8" and prayed to be 6'10". He was born that way. What do you want? This guy runs a 4.240. Okay, what do you want? He's fast. He was given that ability. He didn't ask for it, right? This guy opens a business, whatever. This business failed, that, but he opens his random business, and all of a sudden he gets a purchase order for $1 million, and the thing takes off, right? So, so that's not success, right? That just happened. But there are people who worked and had a dream and had a focus and had a vision in their head, and they went out and did it. And so the challenge is that in life we can fall under the influence of not completing our journey, right? Giving up. Oh my God, it looks so bleak. Look how many times I failed. No, you got to keep going, right? So he's saying looking to obtain this level of purity and fighting for that to be lishma will give us a certain strength that will allow us to endure the journey. Alpha P, even though the Chama Ta'er, he says the wisdom of the Torah in essence. Oh wait, okay, okay. So let's stop here. Let's stop here. Let's stop here. So this is 5, and it's going to go into a new section now, right? Wait. Yeah, 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 yeah. So this is stop here because he's going into a new section. Hold on. I mean, we don't necessarily have to stop here. What do you want to do? You want to continue on here, or do you want to do Path of the Just?
Let's keep going a little bit.
Okay, great. He's about to light it up. Okay, so the wisdom of the Torah, in essence, the path of acquiring is based on the explanation you understand of. You can understand the sage's statement in the Pure Karavot. This is the path of the Torah. Bread with salt you shall eat. Water in small measures you shall drink, and upon the ground you shall sleep. You shall live a life of deprivation, and in Torah you shall toil. If you do so, happy shall you be all, and it shall be well with you, it says in the Psalms. Happy you shall be. That's what he's going off of this statement in this world, and it shall be well with you in the world to come. So that's what he's saying this word means. Uh, I thought it was shit. Yishaul, he says the So he says the question arises regarding this teaching. What is the difference between wisdom of the Torah and other worldly wisdoms, which do not require the most such mortification and a life of suffering, but instead toil alone is perfectly sufficient for acquiring these wisdoms? So the person who has to keep the Torah, has his wisdom, and the person who doesn't also has his wisdom, right? He says, he says, he says, in the case of the wisdom of the Torah, by contrast, even though we work very hard at it, that it is still not enough for us to acquire it, other than by the means of mortification, bread with salt, and a life of deprivation. This is Rabbi Akshat. He says to connect to the Torah, you got his outlook, hard life, hard life. Shel ha devarim. So he says, the conclusion of this statement is even more surprising, for it reads, if you do, happy you will be in this world, and you shall be well in the world to come. Granted that it is possible for it to be well with me in the world to come. But in this world, I am morting myself in my eating, drinking, and sleeping habits, and I'm living under conditions of great deprivation. Can it be said about such a life, happy shall you be in the world? You hear the question, right? if I'm supposed to go through this hard life and I only have bread and salt, enough water to drink, and go through this, how can the verse tell me I'm going to be happy? I'm going to have this happy life if I do this. It sounds weird. Can this be called a happy life in the sense of the term as it is applied in this world? Imnam lifi ha mi vo'er le'yil. So he says, however, following the above explanation that engages in the Torah and observing the mitzvot in accordance to their law under the stringent conditions is performed in order to give one's creator satisfaction, not for one's own pleasure. This cannot be obtained other than by the way of the great service and through the mighty toil of purification of the body. So he says the following. He says engaging in Torah, in the mitzvot, in the laws under stringent conditions is before to give one's creator satisfaction, not for one's own pleasure. This cannot be obtained, but others by great service through the toil purification. So this is how we connect to the other. He says, "Vehata salu le harishona hayat." He says the first strategy is to accustom oneself to not accept anything for one's own pleasure, even with. So now he's gonna start laying out rules now on how to obtain this level, and this is where it starts to get hard. Okay. So he says the first strategy is to accustom oneself not to accept anything for one's own pleasure, even with respect to those things that are permitted and actually indispensable for the requirement of the body continues existence, such as eating, drinking, sleeping, and other such essential activities. In this manner, he removes himself entirely from any pleasure that accompanies these actions, even against his will, while in the process of taking the necessities he requires to obtain sustaining life until he lives a life of deprivation in the literal sense. Bro, bro. וזה אחר שחבר הגליל בזה. So subsequently, once he has become accustomed to this way of deprivation, and his body no longer desires to receive any pleasure for itself, now he can engage in the Torah study and observe the mitzvot in this manner as well. That is, he can engage in Torah. He can engage in Torah and mitzvot in order to give satisfaction to his Creator, and not for his own pleasure in the slightest degree, unless he does not regret his earlier deeds, as stated in Tosfos on Rosh Hashanah. There is also a mystical meaning to this idea, as stated in Rambam, but this is not the place to elaborate. This guy is so random. Okay, so he's saying like this. It's getting hard, man. Okay. So it says, "Vekishiva vacha baze ze zecha le ta'um." Okay, so he says when a person merits the stage, he also merits a taste of a happy life that is fulfilled with very goodness and delight without drawing back of any deprivation. The life that is revealed through engaging in the Torah and mitzvot for their own sake, as this is as Rabbi Meir says in Avot, anyone who studies Torah for his own sake merits many things, and not only that, but the entire world is worthwhile for his sake. The Torah's secrets are revealed to him, and he becomes as an ever increasing wellspring. Says Rabbi Meir, Ve'alav ha'ketuv omer. So it says, regarding such a person, the verse says, taste and see that the Lord is good, as explained above. That one who has a taste of engaging, a taste of engaging in the Torah and the mitzvot for the sake, for its own sake's merit, and sees the purpose of creation fulfilled in him. So that's important. Like we're seeing that we have to be aware that when we're learning Torah, that the purpose of creation is being fulfilled as we do this, right? Creation, everything. This purpose is, as stated, only for God to bestow good upon his creatures, since it is the way of the good to bestow good. He is glad and joyful in the manner of years of life that God has granted him, and the entire world is worthwhile for his sake. Ata tevin et sheni hasi dorin. He says, now you can understand both sides of the coin. With one respect, engaging into the Torah and mitzvot, he says, and on the other side, the path of the Torah. That is extensive preparation through which a person must prepare the cleansing of his body before meriting the fulfillment of the Torah and mitzvot themselves. During the stage he increases he necessarily engages in the Torah and the mitzvot for their own sake, but not contaminated by the desire to act for one's pleasure, the desire to receive for oneself. For he has not yet managed to purify and cleanse his body from the desire to receive pleasure from the vanities of this world. During this period, he has to live a life of deprivation while toiling in the Torah, as stated in the Mishnah. He says, however, once he finishes the complete path of Torah and has already purified his body and is qualified to observe the Torah and the mitzvot for their own sake in order to give his creator satisfaction, he has now reached the other side of the coin, which is a life of great delight and tranquility. This is the purpose of creation, to bestow good upon his creatures, which is the happiest life in both this world and the world to come. Thus, the big difference between wisdom of the Torah and the other worldly wisdom has been thoroughly clarified. The difference is that the attainment of worldly wisdom does not improve the life in this world at all, since they do not provide one with even a small comprehension of compensation for the pain and suffering that a person continuously goes through in life in his day. So they don't even address that. They have no solutions for it. Blah, right? And so he says, accordingly, one does not have to rectify his body to acquire these wisdoms. And so he's saying, he's saying, number one, the secular wisdom does nothing for the plights and the realities that we deal with every day, right? It doesn't ease the pain. It doesn't give clarity to it. It doesn't even understand it. In many cases, it doesn't even acknowledge it. He says the second part, in terms of definition, is that worldly wisdom doesn't require you to purify your body, right? So if a person wants the Torah, it's just they have to live a pure life. They have to do a pure life. It's not just information. No, it's a vibration. It has to be pure. So accordingly, one does not have to rectify his body to acquire these wisdoms, and the toil he invests to acquire them is sufficient, just as all obtainments of this world are acquired by working hard for them. He says, Asika ha Torah ha mitzvot shechol anenim hu. So he says the name, the same is not true of the Torah and mitzvot, those whose whole purpose is to render a person fit and worthy to receive all the goodness in the purpose of creation. So learning the Torah is not just about wisdom in the brain, it's about literally experiencing a different frame of reality, right? And he's saying, unfortunately, the world tells us to be luxurious and this and overindulge and all this. He says, no, but the true path of God is to reject those things and to transform the body into a vessel of sharing and not just a vessel of receiving. So he's saying, but the worldly wisdom doesn't require that. The worldly wisdom says, you invest, you learn, and that's it. Here, you got to purify yourself. And he says, a person is worthy of receiving all the goodness for the purpose of creation, to bestow good upon his creatures. Consequently, one has certainly purified his body so that it is worthy and deserving of that divine goodness. Gam neka v'ir hatav. The Mishnah states, if you the Mishnah states, if you do so, happy shall you be in this world. Has been through that has also been thoroughly clarified. You should be happy in this world. To say this, infer this message from the verse with the full intention of awareness. They wish. Okay, so let's stay here at 9 because I have to give this other class in 30 minutes. Because on Wednesday, I do short on Wednesday, so just talk it out just a little bit. Bro, that was heavy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was just the weight of it. You know what I mean? He's just like putting. For me, I felt like I felt a lot of pressure right now. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like lifestyle change and just being aware of certain things. In terms of obtaining the Torah. But this is how the Rav Berg when I met them at the Kabbalah, they used to live like this.
Mm-hmm.
They were. I mean, it just so happened the Kabbalah got big. You know what I mean? But their whole thing was like living in poverty. Like, I mean, they wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
All the stuff that they have, their students bought it for them. Like the house that they got, everything. Like you think, like I thought it was like. I mean, I know them. You know what I mean? I was really involved. You think like, no, they was making all this money, mega church. No, it wasn't even that. Kabbalah, all that money that keeps the Kabbalah going is from money they never touched it. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like they didn't do it. Like everything they had. So they were in this mindset. I'm not 100% there yet.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot, bro, because I'm the type of guy, once I go into something, I'm all the way, and it's a lifelong thing. You know what I mean? It's not like I dip my toe in and see if I like it, that type of thing. But Rabbi Pinchas, I wouldn't say he's on like living in deprivation, but he definitely, afflictions, definitely is thing. But I mean, I'm a fasting. I just, living in that, you connect to that deprivation stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're right.
Oh, yeah. Anyway.
So that's me, man.
Let's
I
go.
was made for this. What do you mean?
Yeah, for real.
Jeez. Wow. All
It
right.
makes sense though. It makes sense.
What are you saying?
It makes sense. It makes sense in it, like because like for myself personally, it's like Hashem gives you these desires, right? And you pursue them. Okay, fine. And then you come into the wisdom of the Torah, and then you have to curb these desires. You have to realize that they're not for myself because that's not the purpose of creation. Therefore, so how do you transform just receiving for the self to receive to give? How do you become more like your maker? That's deprivation. You know what I mean? It's like the suffering because it's like you got a taste of this and you've conditioned yourself to, okay, this is what life is for. But then you come into the wisdom of the Torah, it's like, no, that's not it. So now you're depriving yourself, but through this purification, you come to realize that, okay, this suffering is good for me. in reality, am I really suffering at all? I'm not. You know, I'm gaining more mastery of self. I'm gaining more mastery of my environment. I'm becoming one with Hashem. Everything is mine because everything is Hashem's in a sense. So it's like you gotta. There's no free lunches out here. Ain't no free lunches. You know, you have to toil. So that's how I kind of look at it.
Yeah, no, you're with me. I was thinking like I was like, man, this is a great sugya for a guy, for when he's dating. He'd be
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, we a it can't be glitz and glamour.
Mm-hmm.
It can't be glitz and glamour. We got to come into this thing and we got to change our. I love it. I mean, hey, that's what I'm saying. Anyways, so all right, I didn't get a chance to respond last night when you did text. I was having a meeting with Hebrew Israelite leaders
Mm-hmm.
and like Captain Tazariak, and I don't know if you know Joel and all these different guys, different camps. And I was talking to them about accepting, me being the chief rabbi of the African American community and this, and they wanted why weren't we able to vote? So it was a good conversation, but I couldn't respond that because it was like heated, and it was like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people it was intense, you know what I mean? But I think we made progress, and
Okay.
we're all there because they need, because there are things that have been said and done against the Israelite movement that are not right. They got blamed for things that they didn't do. They've been incorporated in things. They have not attempted any violence, right, against anybody, and they got accused of a shooting they had nothing to do with,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think there's a conversation with them in the ADL at some point, to talk about that, and ultimately is going to reform them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And their whole thing. So anyway, we'll see, we'll see. But yeah, we're making moves. But that's why. But my point for mentioning that is we still got to do. We got to get our Kaf HaYashar back.
Mm-hmm.
So this evening we have we could do both. But they're big. It's hard to do both when you have Kaf HaYashar and Path of the Just together because it's two different brain functions. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just being aware of like it's just it's just like it's a lot. You know what I mean? So we could do one or the other tonight. Which
Okay.
one?
Mm, let's do Kaf HaYashar
Okay,
and then we could do Path of the Just and
in
then
the
we could do
morning.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
cool. All right, and we'll keep working on this Rob Ashlock. We're just in the Rob Ashlock space,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because even on Friday we're going to continue on the whole Rob Ashlock thing too,
Okay.
that type of thing too. So, anyways, all right, cool too. Baruch atah Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen.